Hi, everyone. So, last time we spoke, we discussed mindset, but this week I want us to talk through affordability and assessing a property to see if it's a good fit for short term rental. So, let's dive in and take a look at what that looks like.
Okay, so if you're like me, you want a place that you can enjoy now and later in retirement. So you've got the location, but what about the budget? Online tools like Bankrate can help you estimate your mortgage affordability based on your income, debt, and interest rate. Let's assume you make $75,000 a year and you have a monthly debt of $500. These are debts such as child support, credit cards, or student loans. Let's say you're estimating that you're going to put 10,000 down as a down payment and your interest rate is 6.5%. A side note, this is still possible to find an interest rate at 6.5%. You simply have to look at smaller banks such as your community bank versus these larger retailer banks. Okay, next let's head over to Zillow and start browsing properties within your budget and your chosen location. So you found a few. Excellent. Let's start to crunch these numbers. Let's say that you're interested in this property here near North Carolina Central University. Let's take a look at what the monthly payments look like. Principal and interest. So let's say you're able to snag this at $150,000 and you put 5% down. This is actually less than the $10,000 you had initially estimated, which is excellent. More cash on hand for renovations. Keep in mind that there will be a PMI because you're putting less than 20% down on the property. However, if you want to have extra cash on hand, this is a good option because later on you can always use the equity that you've built into the place to remove that PMI. Then we have the property tax, the home insurance. In this case, there is no HOA fee. And then we have included the utilities. Again, because it's a short term rental, you will be the one that's responsible for all of the utilities. Great. So now we have an estimated monthly payment of $1,442. Now we get to move into the fun part, which is looking at what is the area commanding in terms of short-term rentals. Let's move on to Airbnb. Okay, so here we have a view of Durham, North Carolina, sometime in the end of April. And because it's a 2-bed, 1-bath, we're going to assume that at least 4 guests would be interested in renting the property. So when looking at the different properties, you want to go into the filters and you want to make sure that you filter everything down as specific as possible. Any kind of offerings that you're going to include, you want to have them highlighted here. The most important part of this is actually the property type, especially since you're looking at a 2-bed, 1-bathroom house. You want to make sure that you're including house in here. There are plenty of 2-bedroom apartments, but someone who's going to be renting a house is looking at a house specifically, maybe for a backyard, or maybe it's pet friendly. So the reasoning behind it is important, and you want to make sure your comparable is clean as possible. Well, we know that we're interested in buying a property in this area. So even though there were about 7 to 10 options before, we zoomed into this location because that is the closest comparables. You always want to keep it within a mile or less. So you want to make sure to keep your eye on all of your comparables being very clean. We're really just interested in these 2 properties here because they're 2-bed, 1-bath houses. And in this case, it's a 2-bed, 2-bath. So taking a look at these 2 properties, you can see that one house decided to go with a theme. It's a Barbie dream house, which is great, has beautiful photos, and you can already see what their rating is as a host, how many reviews they have, and their nightly rate. We want to look through reviews for 2 reasons. One, you want to see what is the activity. How often are people staying at that house on a monthly basis? And what is it that guests are expecting from hosts in that area? For example, first, we want to see how often people stay. So it looks like in January we had 1 guest. In December we had 1, 2, 3, 4 guests. And November we had 1, 2, 3 guests. And then October we had 1, 2, 3 guests. Okay, so between 3 and 4 guests per month is what they experience over the winter time period. And then we also want to just take a look at what is some of the feedback. So this is like really good because we have some additional information that this guest provided. So the first one was that the place had a certain smell, that there were noticeable stains and streaks from wear and tear. And then this one was super important because this is related to the neighborhood. So they said that it was in a bit of a rougher neighborhood and they had been warned by Uber drivers just to be careful. So this is important if you're not familiar with the area, just to maybe do some extra investigating on the area to make sure that you feel comfortable moving forward with your purchase. Let's take a look at what people are saying for the other unit. 39 reviews. So we had someone who just stayed a few days ago. So that's the second person in January, third, fourth. All right, so 4 people in January. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people in December. And let's take a look at November. 1, 2, 3. All right, 3. So between 3 and 5 guests over the winter months is actually really great. Both of these units are showing us that there's activity in the area and that you wouldn't have necessarily a challenge renting out your space. Let's go to the spreadsheet to see what it looks like for a low, mid, and high season return. So I've broken it down into 3 sections: low season, mid season, and high season. What we have here are the number of stays per month, so 3, 5, and 8. And to keep it conservative, I've estimated that each stay books 3 nights per stay. And then again, we talked about that sweet spot of a nightly rate because the 2 listings that we looked at was between 173 and 189. I estimated that you could charge about $180 a night. At the monthly revenue, we're looking at a low season of 1620 with a high being over 4,000. The way I've broken down the months is how many months you're going to be in each of these seasons. So low season, about 4 months, mid season's about 3 months, and then the high season could be up to 3 months. I'm aware that this does add up to only 10 months out of 12 months in a full year. And the reason for that is, again, I always go conservative with my estimates. I don't like to assume that I'm going to be renting out the house for the full year. I always remove 2 months from my estimate just to make sure that if I can rent consistently at a 10 months out of 12, then that's going to be putting me in a really good position in terms of meeting all of my expenses and making some profit. So let's move over to the profit piece because that's the most important part. You want to make sure after all your expenses, you're still making money. So during the low season, you're not going to be making too much. You're going to be making about $178 per month once your expenses are paid. However, when you start to look at the mid-season, it starts to increase to about $1,256. And then during the high season months, you really have some great income potential, bringing in about $2,800 to $2,900 per month. So if we add that all up together on a yearly basis, you're looking at just over $13,000. This is once all of your expenses are paid for. I also want to highlight that this doesn't even consider all of the tax benefits that you get from all the write-offs. So any kind of improvements that you make on the house, any expenses related to renovations, are write-offs at the end of the year, which you do get to see some of that money come back to you. So this is $13,000 that you profit sort of on the front end, but then there's a back end benefit as well.
I hope that you found that walkthrough helpful in terms of how to analyze a property and whether or not it's a good fit for short-term rental. One of the things that I wanted to highlight was regulations. So as short-term rentals continue to grow in popularity, there are a lot of regulations that are coming down the pipeline at the city and state level, even at the village level in some cases. So before you purchase any property, make sure that you are up to date with all of the local laws. The last thing you want to do is commit to a mortgage with the assumption that you are going to make X amount of money with short-term rentals, just to find out that you are not allowed to, in fact, rent via the short-term rental platform. So just keep yourself up to date with that. So there are other considerations that I didn't mention in the video, such as upfront costs when it comes to owning a short-term rental. That includes furnishings, decorations, and any type of extra entertainment that you want to include for your guests. You can keep it as simple as board games and then or as elaborate as pool tables and things like that. Again, I hope you found this video helpful. If you're interested in seeing an analysis for long-term rentals versus short-term, just let me know in the comments below and I'll create a video for that. The next time that we meet, we're going to talk through choosing a property with the lens of knowing that renovations are involved and understanding what is your tolerance in terms of a large project, small project, contractors, and all of that information. So stay tuned until next time.